This is really bad. My biggest fear about Nintendo Switch Online making retro games into a subscription service is finally coming true. They can and will remove games. And this is terrible for video game preservation on Nintendo's end. It just highlights a pretty big issue. But before we get started, I wanted to mention that I have a goal to hit 30,000 subscribers before the Switch 2 launches, so if you enjoy my content, consider subscribing, and if I hit that goal, I will give away a copy of the new Mario Kart game. But the game that they're removing is Super Soccer on the SNES library, and so far they've only confirmed that they're doing it in Japan. And while this may not seem like a big deal, this is setting a pretty bad precedent that they could just remove games from the service. And I just think that's really bad. I know they did remove games from the Virtual Console, but at least with the Virtual Console, you could permanently keep the games and keep playing them forever. With this, Nintendo actually already implemented a system to where they could just pull the games from you at any time without an update. So, once they remove this game, you don't even have to update it. It will just, automatically just vanish and not be playable anymore. I think this is, obviously really bad for video game preservation, since all of the games that are on Nintendo Switch Online are not properly preserved. You do not own them. Nintendo could strip access to them at any time, as we're seeing here. So, this really just highlights a huge issue with Nintendo Switch Online. Despite the fact that value-wise, the service has been getting better, and sure, there is a good variety of games after a few years, but it doesn't really matter that much for preservation that they could just strip them from you at any time. This is why it was nice to have at least an option with Virtual Console. I know some people do criticize the Virtual Console retrospectively, because it did get kind of expensive if you did want to play a lot of games, and that's where I do see the value of Nintendo Switch Online. But I feel like Nintendo Switch Online really shouldn't be the sole way to play retro games on the Switch and eventually the Switch 2, just because of this. Because you don't have permanent access to these games, you have to keep paying to access them, and then they could also strip access to them at any time. The reason they're doing this is probably because of licensing, since while Super Soccer is published by Nintendo throughout most of the world, in Japan, it is published by Spike Chunsoft, which is, probably why, because sometimes, if you're just working with other companies in these scenarios, sometimes, things like this can happen. Some people are saying it might be due to the fact that Sony has some shares in Kadokawa, the parent company of Spike Chunsoft, but I don't really think that's the case, since they only have a 10% share, which is not majority, and I don't think that's going to influence things that much. I think there might be another reason. Maybe it was some kind of license that they had that, expired or something. That might have been the case for Virtual Console, too, since there were several other Virtual Console games that were also removed, as I kind of alluded to earlier, but yeah, this is just really bad, and it just definitely highlights a pretty big issue with these subscription services in general, or just, I guess, even though this is technically still downloaded games and not streaming, it still is a technical, similar thing to where they're offering you a variety of games, on here that you just, pay to keep accessing, kind of similar to, streaming in some ways. Honestly, streaming is, just as bad, if not worse in some ways, because sometimes you have to fully pay, the $60, and then they could just strip access to a game that you've just been playing for a while. But here, I still think it's pretty bad, since there is, no other way to access these games. And with, Super Soccer in particular, with that game, I don't think there are any other ways to play this game. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if this is, actually sold anywhere else, or they will be publishing this game anywhere else. I mean, Spike Chunsoft could easily, publish this game, on the eShop, or, other places, but there doesn't seem to be any other alternative. I know this is just one scenario, but this could happen again with other games. What's stopping them from removing Kablooey. Okay, I'm going too far there. That's a bit too cruel to think about. That would be the absolute downfall of Nintendo if they removed Kablooey from the SNES app. But yeah, this is just another thing that goes to show how bad Nintendo is about video game preservation. Like, they do things like this, yet they shut down all of these ways, like emulators, ROM sites, and different things. Like, some of the only ways to play certain classic games that Nintendo doesn't offer any alternatives for. And yet, like, on the Switch, where they are technically having alternatives, they could strip these games away from you at any time. It still just shows that Nintendo, in a lot of ways, just haven't learned anything about video game preservation and just really don't care to. I know they really don't have an obligation to. They are a company. But at the same time, it just really sucks. Because, like, I know Nintendo is capable of doing a lot with video game preservation. Like, one very simple alternative they could do that would actually probably make them more money is having a service, like, on top of these Nintendo Switch Online apps, where you could download the games permanently and play them without a Nintendo Switch Online subscription, just for, like a small payment. Like, maybe for, like, NES games, it's like $3.99, SNES games, like $4.99, Nintendo 64 games, $8.99, stuff like that. Like, kind of like the virtual console, you, like, pay, like, a certain price per game to, like, actually download it on there. And once the game is downloaded, the system doesn't have to check whether you have Nintendo Switch Online or not. You'll have it permanently, so if the servers ever do go down, like, sometime in the far future, you will be able to play these games. You can play it without Nintendo Switch Online. It's just, I think there's so many benefits to it. Or even if Nintendo doesn't want to add certain games to Nintendo Switch Online, like, say Nintendo and the Pokemon Company, they don't really want to add the classic Pokemon games to Nintendo Switch Online, but they offer them through, like, a thing where you could buy them individually and then download them onto the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance app. They could do something like that. Like, I think that's just a really simple alternative that will actually help video game preservation and help keep some of these games available. And then also with cases like Super Soccer, like, if they are planning on removing a game, you could just download it and have it on there forever. It's just such a simple thing that is just really annoying that Nintendo isn't doing anything about. Maybe it's because they are so insistent that everyone pays for Nintendo Switch Online, and I kind of understand that, but at this point, I don't really think that's an issue, because there's, like I said, there still are benefits to having Nintendo Switch Online if you want to access, like, a ton of games. And then also, like, all the online games that they have available, like, I don't really think they're gonna worry about that too much. Like, the retro games are not the only incentive to Nintendo Switch Online. But yeah, I really hope Nintendo improves in the future, because this is just a really concerning thing to see. This is really setting a very unfortunate precedent. But anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more, and make sure to check out my Discord server and Blue Sky if you want to. Stay perky!